I say have to, it's up to you. If you're the sort of guy who's happy to take things from friends of friends and then not bother to thank them, you could do that, but probably you wouldn't be doing it for very long. And a few of your friends would suggest that you change your behaviour. How would you do that? Then you state, you link them. So you're publishing these are not a central site. It's not one place with everybody's records, because that would sound uncannily like a financial system we have today. And who knows who's running that system? Are these people we really trust? Well, people like a system, they can stay in it. But I suggest another system where those records are kept separately. You keep your records, I'll keep my records, we will interface them using the web. Digital keys are very important here. Without wanting to get technical, it's a way that, like when you sign a document, we can be sure of who it is who's created this data. So that's more important than if we're just posting random photos to Facebook. People have got to have their own servers, and they've got to be connected somehow. So that was the conclusion of the larger picture. Now, what are these servers holding? I've talked about economic data. Well, if we took the system, tried to model it around the ordinary economic system, then I suggest that wouldn't work. I've tried it. When I first thought, this is a quote from Abraham Maslow. He said, classical economic theory, based as it is on an inadequate theory of human motivation, because it thinks everybody's just out for themselves all the time, could be revolutionized by accepting the reality of higher human needs, including the impulse to self-actualization. I translate that as getting on your own vibe, doing the things that make sense to you, fulfilling your unique destiny. Not terms you'd hear from an ordinary economist, perhaps. The impulse and the love for the highest values. So, as a practical example, you get a call on your mobile and says, can you call me back? This is a really expensive call for me. And because of how it works with talk plans, then you think, well, okay, I can ring them back. If I ring this person back, I'm going to spend 3 euro cents a minute, and otherwise he's going to spend 7 euro cents a minute. Would you ring them back? Does it matter who it is? Does it matter whether you've got credit on your phone? It matters on all sorts of things. Or if it's your mum or your wife, you better ring them back. If that relationship's important to you, well, that's how you manage your relationships. But that was my way of showing, look, we're not always taking the short-term option of what's the most in it for me. I mean, even if there are a certain level of multinationals, even if that's what the economic textbooks say, companies don't even behave like that. So, if we've got an economic system founded on that, then we're likely to run into trouble. So this is another way that I propose to do it. You've heard it said, I suspect, that you get what you measure. I'm putting forward a system which is measuring healthy relationships, which takes that into account. So, your wealth in this system is not how much you've gathered to yourself and taken from others, but how many people you've helped, how many people trust you, how many people care about you. These, I think, in the older days, before money and cities and economy was so important, I think this is much more how people would understand what it means to be a human. So, to get a little bit mathematical, because I am trained as a mathematician, this was a long time ago, but saying you have sympathy for a friend if and only if you would give up your own profit to prevent their loss. If you say, well, stuff him, I'm not doing anything for him, but then you don't have sympathy for that guy. It's not a binary, yes you do or no you don't. How much sympathy? I mean, if it's a random stranger or an advertiser or somebody you really don't care about, well, you've got zero sympathy, you never call them back. Doesn't matter on prices, if it's costing me any money, I'm not going to do it. If it's, say, it's your wife's calling you and you've got a joint bank account, why would you not call her back? Plus you've got the emotional aspect. So I've called that a sympathy of one, because any money that you're losing is saving. So when, according to that example, you'd have an indifference value. If it was somebody towards this end of the spectrum, More sympathy, yes, I'll call you back, because it's only costing me 3 against 7, that's not much. If it was somebody down here, maybe you've got a bit of sympathy, but it's like, well, sorry, mate, it's my money as well here. So, oops. Indirect sympathy, well, if I've got sympathy for you, you've got sympathy for your friends, and so on, suddenly, every welfare is important to me. Maybe not much, more or less. I can't say, well, stuff him, I don't care about him. So, well, I don't know who he is, but he is somebody's friend, and we're all connected. And this, I think, is a really important understanding. I mean, yes, we've heard about 6 degrees, but we have an economic system which says, well, no, everybody is a little isolated unit, they need their own washing machine, their own. When you look at the lives that people lead, many of them, particularly in cities, not so much in Bangladesh, but in the developed countries, where money defines our relationships, we are very isolated. So an alternative way of looking at things which could understand, if you've got a lot of angry, upset people in your street, a lot of angry, upset friends, you're not likely to be feeling good about life, I think is a closer model of how people behave, how they would like the freedom to behave. So, this is, stress the word self here. Self-evaluation. So, when you have an interaction with somebody, I mean, I don't talk about buying and selling, you use these words, it's about buying, okay, I want to argue the price. There's a whole frame of selfishness that comes into it. Did you get a good price? What's a good price? If you're selling, you need more. So, what's good about it? It's like a good job. If you get more, that's good. But if you're in an altruistic frame, then you've got to think about it another way. So, you can evaluate yourself. Now that too, you think, well, the system, some people could say, especially economists might say, well, if people can evaluate their own interactions, that's never going to work. Because people are just selfish, they're going to fiddle the system to their benefit. And some people might behave like that, and if everybody behaves like that, it won't work. But my thought is, most people, most of the time, really not out to cause a great deal of trouble. They might cut a corner or two, but they do want to live in a world where everybody gets housed and fed. And they are really upset about the world in which they live now, in which this doesn't seem to be happening, and more money gets spent on weapons and terror. So, how would they do that? They would evaluate it, they're just putting a piece of data online. I'm not going to go geeky on you, but they can express themselves in terms of money, if that happens to be a helpful unit. Maybe you spent some money to help somebody out. Maybe you spent some time as well. But we don't have to use money, we don't have to use time. So we're not tied to any particular way to express ourselves. So maybe you could do something that the farmer's got so many apples that he just has to pick them up, and it takes him 2 minutes to gather a basket of apples. And you can give it to somebody who will have to work 10 minutes to get the money to buy those apples. So we have a non-zero sum. Now that's not a brilliant example. A better one would be something like, you've got a car and your friends are arriving at the station, so it's going to take you 5 minutes to pick them up at the station, but it would have taken them 20 minutes to walk. And you care about that friend. So it's the right thing to do on one level. If it's a real friendship, then yeah, we help each other out. So let's have an economic calculus that reflects that. So I'm going to use the word multidimensional. That again should not scare you off. That just means more than one number. We're thinking, well, the price has to be a single number, how many euros, how many yen, whatever. But if there's 2 people involved, and we're trying to honestly represent the transaction well, you may have your opinion, I have mine. And it's not a power struggle, oh, I want the price down, no, make it more. We just publish how we feel about something. So another way to not think economics, just think this is a network in which people can express themselves.